What if you discovered that the house you had been living in was part of one of the most important civil rights cases in Detroit history? That is how Daniel Baxter first learned the history of Dr. Ossian Sweet. Welcome back to the Detroit Black Birth Archive. I'm Shekita Long, a community doula, childbirth educator, researcher, and founder of the archive. In my first video, I introduced the book, Detroit 1925, The Ossian Sweet Story. Today, we are beginning the actual reading. But the thing is, this book doesn't begin in 1925. It begins in 1975 with a 10-year-old black boy named Daniel Baxter, who was living with his family inside the former home of Dr. Ossian Sweet. That alone stopped me. Daniel and his family were living inside history before he fully understood what had happened there. Daniel writes that one Friday in October 1975, his father picked him and his brother up from school early. They returned home, sat down for lunch, and heard someone knocking at the door. Herbert, the man from the newspaper is at the door and wants to talk to you about the house. I'm not talking to that man. A reporter from the Detroit Free Press had come to speak with Daniel's father about the history of their house. His father didn't want to talk to the reporter, so he sent Daniel outside. Now, Daniel was only 10 years old. He didn't know the details. He only understood that a black doctor had once lived there. A white man had been killed, and the doctor had not gone to jail. That was a story as a child understood it. And this is why preserving history matters. When the full story isn't passed down, children inherit pieces. They may know something important happened, but they don't always know who was involved, why it happened, or what it meant. The reporter asked Daniel a few questions, took his picture, and left. Daniel went back inside, finished his lunch, and didn't think much about it. But the story wasn't finished with him. The next week, Daniel's teacher brought the newspaper article into his classroom. Imagine being 10 years old and seeing your home in the newspaper. Then your teacher asks you to stand in front of the class and explain its history. Daniel could only repeat the little bit he had told the reporter. He was living in the Ossian Sweet house but he had not yet been given the complete story of the people who came before him. That part feels important to me because this happens all over Detroit. We drive past historic homes, we walk into old hospitals, churches, and community buildings. We live on streets where Black doctors, midwives, nurses, activists, and families once changed this city. But if nobody preserves those stories, we may never know what happened right where we are standing. That is part of why I created the Detroit Black Birth Archive. The archive is not only about collecting names and dates, it's about helping Detroit understand the lives connected to these places. Dr. Ossian Sweet was not only involved in a famous housing case, he was a Black physician, a husband, a father, and a member of a larger medical community. Before there was a court case, there was a family trying to make a home. Daniel Baxter eventually learned more about the history of his home and carried the responsibility of sharing that history forward. In the acknowledgement section, he thanks his parents, Herbert and Inez Baxter, for entrusting him with the responsibility of preserving and sharing the history of their home. That is legacy. His parents preserved the house, their son preserved the story, and now, through this book, another generation gets to learn it. This also makes me think about our own families. How many stories are sitting inside our parents, grandparents, and elders? How many family photographs do we have without names written on the back? How many Detroit stories could disappear because everybody assumes somebody else will remember? That's the question I want to leave you with today. Did you know that Daniel Baxter's family lived in this Ossian Sweet house? And is there a house, building, or place in your own family that carries a story worth preserving? Tell me in the comments. In the next video, we will move deeper into the story of Dr. Ossian Sweet and what happened in Detroit in 1925. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who cares about Detroit history. Visit the Detroit Black Birth Archive to learn more about the people, places, and stories being preserved. Because someone's history is not sitting inside a museum. Sometimes history is the house you have been living in all along.